let's see if that actually works. Setting up webinar.
So it says Zoom says we're in there. I don't see us on Facebook yet.
Supposedly
there we are.
Supposedly we're live.
Yeah, I see us.
Look at that. I should hit record over here too.
True story.
Cloud. All right. What's up, everyone? Normally we do this over in our little private wealth acceleration group. So this is fun to do a live with you, Nick, and your own fancy group. Yeah,
I love everybody in here, but I like the wealth acceleration group because we get so much participation on the Zoom. Those people are always more engaged.
Yeah, Justin's here too. Justin inspired this. Justin, you were the one who told me I should break this all down in a live. So if this goes poorly, that's on you.
Yep. We're putting this on Justin.
This is on Justin. I don't know if I have my camera oriented correctly or if I'm zoomed in enough, but I'm looking forward to the feedback on that. Okay, so I think Nick shared about this on Saturday, and I was going to jump in the group and share some short and long-term business strategies for what I'm doing, and plan to do that on Saturday. And then the kids had other plans for me in terms of what the weekend was going to look like. So here we are doing it now. Okay, so over in the Wealth Acceleration Group, we've been talking a lot about cash flow engineering, and what we've been really trying to clarify for everybody is that cash flow engineering is really about business strategy. And it just so happens when people hear cash flow, they get a little scared because that sounds like a finance thing or an accounting thing, but they're all intertwined. Finance is about managing your money, and accounting is really about reporting what happened. And so you need that information, but ultimately they're kind of the output of strategy. So they're pretty intermingled is kind of the point. So in terms of my business strategy, so I've got a few things going on. I've got a CPA firm, Nth Degree CPAs. And I've got something called Nth Degree Network, which is 9 other accounting firms, 8 in the US and 1 in Canada. And then we've got the Wealth Q&A, which is more like a digital product where we're doing Nick and I are doing trainings once a week and we're answering questions. And so those things are all in a way interconnected. And then we've got some apps that are under development, and I've got a book that's coming out. So these are all things, but ultimately they're interconnected in a broader strategy. And so I use principles to try to navigate through this. Nick and I have very similar principles. We just use slightly different language. So you'll find that to be, that's why I think we work so well together, is that we think about things in a very similar way. We just maybe voice them or express them differently. So when we're working through our business strategies, we've got a couple parameters which we view things in. And the overarching idea is that we need to run 2 races, at least 2 races, because I'm always trying to hedge the downside. So if you study all the great entrepreneurs out there, folks who are really extremely wealthy, they create asymmetric risk, so risk that is disproportionate. The upside is substantially greater than the downside. And that's kind of a counter narrative to what's out there, because oftentimes folks view these really successful entrepreneurs and they think like, oh, they got lucky and they just they know how to take risks. Well, they know how to hedge the downside. So as I'm working through new things that I want to do, I need to be able to run 2 races, which means that I have to achieve or check the box on at least 2 strategies or two things. One needs to be, here's just things I'm looking at. Is it a forcing function? Is it a cost savings? Is it a revenue generator? Those are 3 buckets that I'm going to analyze potential strategies through. And I need to be able to say yes to at least 2 of the 3. And I need to know that when I do say yes to the 2 of the 3, or maybe all 3 of them, that one of them has to be close to an absolute, not entirely speculation. So for example, cost savings. Can I say pretty clearly that I'm going to actually save this cost, or am I speculating? Right? And so what's happening is by being able to check the box on at least two of these things, and one of them is close to an absolute rather than speculation, I'm minimizing the downside risk and I'm just creating upside. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So here's the business strategy right now that and Nick has been heavily involved in kind of working through this. So when I created the wealth Q&A last year, I floated out an offer that was a really, really cheap lifetime offer. And that was a revenue generator, but it was also a forcing function in the sense that I've wanted to codify a lot of my strategies. And by bringing people into the group and them paying me money, I then was forced to start actually codifying this stuff. So I generated some revenue, but it was a forcing function. And we priced it at a really small amount because I wasn't sure if I was going to actually enjoy the delivery method. And so I gave myself an out, which was worst case scenario. I just refund everybody the money. And I haven't named the puppy on the cash that I received. Name the puppy, if you're not familiar with that principle, is if you ever go and look at a puppy and you give it a name, chances are that's now your puppy. So when you, it's hard to leave after you've named the dog. So the more money that you collect, the more likely you are to name the puppy, meaning the harder it is going to be for you to actually refund the money. So we actually had multiple ways of kind of hedging that new opportunity. And usually I know that it takes me about 5 months to figure out what the actual idea is. So it took me about 5 months to figure out what we're actually going to be doing with the this super cheap offer, which became the wealth Q&A that Nick hosts with me. So the wealth Q&A now is a feeder for my CPA firm and the Nth Degree Network. So I'm achieving multiple objectives in continuing to grow the Q&A. So that's how I can justify the time. So there's a revenue generating aspect to the Q&A, but again, we got to be able to check at least 2 boxes. It also serves as a forcing function, again, to document all of our information. So the strategy for this year is working backwards, is at the end of this year, I want to launch an app around this concept I have of financial readiness. That is sort of like my home run play. I'm using Nick's barbell, so we got a home run play, and then the CPA firm is like my consistent source of income. So I know that I've got this broader home run play that I want to launch. But in order to get that app together, there's a bunch of milestones I need to hit. So there's a few different versions of the app that we're going to create before we get there. And so we've got the thing at the end of the year that we know we want to put out there that's a potential home run scenario. So we're working backwards to today. So we've got a book that we're working on called that's under my sort of rigging the game concept. So we're putting out a book, Rigging the Game. And we're developing a couple of different versions of the app. And the way that this all kind of fits together is, and Nick, stop me if I'm rambling too much or not being entirely coherent on this. But the way it all fits together is that we're using the Q&A, both again to grow more users to fund our CPA firm and the network, but also it serves as a forcing function, which is that each week of the Q&A is a chapter of the book. So every week, basically, I record the Q&A, and then we take a transcript from the Q&A, and that's the next chapter of the book that then myself and someone who's helping me write it edits it down to what that actual chapter is. So we have the forcing function of getting the book done, and we have the potential revenue generation of the selling this Q&A group. So then we have the book. Well, the book references back to the app that we're selling. So this is all kind of a intertwined thing, right? So we keep selling the Q&A. Q&A is generating revenue. By the Q&A existing, it's a forcing function where I have to codify my content. In codifying the content, it's producing the next chapter of the book. And producing the next chapter of the book, we're getting closer to launching that. Launching the book references back to the version 1 of the app that we're producing. producing the app is a sellable product, but also an internal cost savings because it connects back to some of the work that our firm does and that our network firms do. So each one of these things serves as a forcing function and at least a cost savings or revenue generator, ideally all three if possible. So just to sort of summarize, I had this long-term home run opportunity of this app, but in order to get there, I have a bunch of milestones. In order for me to move forward with any milestone, I have to be able to check off that it's at least either a forcing function, a cost savings, or revenue generator. I need two of the three, ideally all three. And so we mapped out this plan that goes, let's keep growing the Q&A. Q&A is going to generate some revenues. Q&A is going to generate the content for the book. The book is going to reference back to the app, and so the book will potentially be a revenue generator. It's also an ongoing forcing function. The app is going to be revenue generating, but for sure I can pay for it through cost savings. So that's basically the strategy.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think the people come to office days. Here's one of the things that I get all the time is, where'd you learn that? Right? Like, how did you possibly learn all these different things? And the truth is, what Dan does really, really well, and what we've been working through is, I don't know a bunch of stuff that I've learned. It's these frameworks and these checklists, like the one you just shared, Dan. It's just having the barbell framework plus a checklist and just reasoning through things. And you can build really strong long-term strategy. Like you say, rigging the game, which I hear is going to be a phenomenal podcast.
Didn't mention the podcast, but that's coming out soon. And that does, again, it kind of connects back to, it's a forcing function. So I've been talking about doing the podcast for a long time. Have had a bunch of episodes recorded, but I haven't been able to identify that it would also be either a cost savings or revenue generator until now. And so up to this point, it was just a forcing function, but not truly a revenue generator or cost savings. But now that it's connected to the book and to the app and to a few other things, I can justify moving forward with it. In terms of how did I figure out all this out? It goes back to, some of this is just like compounding interest, where the more that you iterate and you learn, you start stacking stuff together, and then you start seeing the trends. I think about business to a large degree as gambling. We're making a lot of bets, and the house usually wins. And so if that's true, then you got to kind of design things differently. You got to create some frameworks to be able to reason your way through it, as you would say, Nick. And so it's okay to go to the casino and gamble a bunch of money if you're willing to lose that money, where you can go, this is just for fun. Like, I'm chalked up, I'm going to Vegas. I know I'm going to lose five grand for fun. So it's okay to lose the money because you're paying for the entertainment value of it, and maybe you win, maybe you don't. But ultimately, we all often get kind of distracted by these shiny objects, and I know that I'm guilty of that. And so how do I rein myself in? And it's through these frameworks. So there's this concept called core capital. Core capital is basically the amount of money that you need to have to retire. And anything above that maybe is FU money, right? You can do whatever you want with it, to use a maybe not so PC term. So until I get to core capital, or in other words, until I have FU money, I probably shouldn't be gambling away these precious resources, because if the house usually wins, then that means that I'm getting further away from achieving my objectives. So if that's the case, then how do I allow myself to still make bets and have fun in business while at the same time reducing my risk and getting closer to my goals? So that sort of became like, how do I solve that problem? I want to keep getting closer to my goals as quickly as possible while having less risk. And so that's where this framework came into play for me, which is I'm reducing risk and creating more opportunity if I can check off more than one box with any new initiative. So I can say it's a forcing function and cost savings and or revenue generating And so whenever I can check off more than one, I'm hedging my downside risk. That means I can proceed forward with it. I can still have fun and try new things, but it's ultimately going to get me closer to that objective. So
awesome. That's I took good notes. If you want notes, drop a comment below. I'll send you over the notes. They're pretty straightforward. Dan and I, like you said, we share a lot of frameworks. Our language is sometimes different. I'm slowly adopting. We're probably adopting each other's language. It makes it less confusing for people that are in both. But I think that's the just one quick takeaway, because I know that we both have something bumping up right after this. The big takeaway, one of the things is Dan has a reliable asset in Nth-Degree CPAs, the CPA firm. And most people might try a million different strategies. If you don't have that reliable thing, which is this side of the barbell, funding your core capital, as Dan would say, a bunch of pivots are not going to help. I think that's the biggest, the reason that both Dan and I can go into a business that is established and find a bunch of money and strategy and stuff is they have an established, reliable thing, right? It's really, really important that at least even part of your business is established and reliable. So you have something on that side of the barbell that is paying your bills while you're out gambling and doing the funsy stuff.
100%. And whenever you introduce something new into that reliable thing, then you create more uncertainty, more potential risk. And that means you don't want to screw up the reliable thing. You want to keep it reliable so that you can swing for these home runs.
Yep.
This is this concept that we talk about around readiness, understanding how your decisions are introducing new risk into your business. So that just goes back to we're going to do new stuff in our reliable thing. Let's make sure we've hedged all the downside risk. We're checking more than one box. We're running more than one race with every new thing so that it's additive to our business, both in terms of cash flow, but also ensuring that we're not taking on additional risk in order to earn that slightly or substantially more cash flow.
Yeah. Any questions that come up? I know we're a couple days late because Dan's kids were napping and getting haircuts and all that stuff. Just drop comments, tag either one of us.
Mostly throwing fits and doing those other things, but mostly throwing fits. So.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. That's what they're doing. Just drop a comment. Obviously, Dan's in here episodically, and I'm here frequently. So drop a comment, tag us. We just have the middle of teaching a class, which is like another forcing function, which is cash flow engineering. And Dan and I'm just co-hosting and kind of staying on top of stuff, taking notes while Dan teaches and answers questions. It's a CFE, cash flow engineering, cfeclass.com. If you want to jump in and kind of see what that's about.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone.